Naval Station Coronado wasn't easily impressed. It had seen legends walk its corridors, SEALs with stories too classified for the Pentagon, commanders who had orchestrated quiet wars, pilots who flew missions that never made the news, men and women who wore their scars like silent medals. Nothing surprised this place. Nothing until Alyssa Hale arrived. She wasn't military, at least that's what the paperwork claimed. Civilian physical therapist, prior experience in trauma rehab, no deployments, no combat, no government ties beyond a basic-level contractor badge. Yet the moment she stepped onto the base 3 months ago, the whispers began. She moves like she's been trained. Did you see how she corrected that SEAL's form? Who the hell teaches civilians that? Her eyes, she looks like she's been in the shit. Rumors spread fast on military bases, but they spread faster when no one could disprove them. Alyssa didn't help her case. She kept her background locked tight behind polite smiles, quiet nods, and a calm that seemed too controlled, like she'd practiced it for years. She wasn't unfriendly. She wasn't cold. She just existed slightly apart, like someone who'd learned the hard way to stay alert even in safe places. She had the habit of scanning rooms before entering. She never sat with her back to a door. Sharp noises made her shoulders jerk just a little. Barely noticeable, unless you knew what to look for. Admiral Mason Reeves definitely knew what to look for. He'd spent decades reading people, especially the ones who tried not to be read. His brain worked like radar, picking up inconsistencies and hidden patterns with unnerving accuracy. And for the last 8 weeks, every time he passed through the rehab center, something about Alyssa tugged at him like a thread waiting to be pulled. She was too precise, too composed, too disciplined. People who'd never served didn't move the way she did. And today, he finally caught something he couldn't ignore. From across the rehab floor, he watched her guide a limping SEAL through mobility drills. The operator, Johnson, a 63 wall of muscle, grunted with frustration as he tried to stabilize his knee. "Slow down," Alyssa said calmly, positioning her hands lightly along his thigh and hip. "You're compensating through your lower back." Johnson scoffed. "I'm not compensating." "You are," she replied, unbothered. "And if you keep doing it, you'll strain your lumbar spine, again." Her voice was soft, gentle even, but her correction was firm, direct, confident. She moved his leg into position with a precision Reeves recognized instantly. Not taught in grad school. Not found in civilian clinics. This was field precision. Combat precision. The kind medics learned under fire, where one wrong angle could be the difference between a soldier walking again or never standing. Reeves watched her fingers trace along the veteran's knee, then adjust his posture with practiced ease. Johnson blinked. "Holy shit," he muttered, "that actually felt better." Alyssa gave a small, warm smile. "Told you." The Admiral folded his arms. There it was again, that calm, unshakable self-assurance. But today she looked even paler than usual, her posture stiff, her movements slightly guarded like she was protecting her side from impact. Twice, Reeves noticed her wince, not when she bent down but when she straightened up. Like something along her ribs hurt. He made a mental note. And Alyssa, sensing eyes on her, glanced across the room. Their gazes locked. Her reaction wasn't dramatic, but it was telling. She didn't look away quickly like someone hiding something. She didn't hold the stare like someone defiant. Instead, she just met his eyes, steady, even, unreadable. She looked like someone who had survived something and learned not to let anyone see the cracks. For reasons Reeves couldn't explain, it made his chest tighten. But before he could approach, his phone vibrated. High-priority message. He looked down for just a second. When he lifted his head again, Alyssa was gone. Her patient blinked, confused. She said she'd be right back. She looked kinda dizzy, actually. Dizzy. Reeves felt something prickle at the back of his neck. He scanned the room. Bathroom empty. Hallway empty. Then he saw it. Her office door, closed, lights off, a faint outline of movement behind the frosted glass. Reeves walked toward it slowly, quietly. Inside, Alyssa gripped the edge of her desk with white-knuckled hands, trying to stay upright. Sweat glistened at her temples. Her breathing was shallow, too shallow, and her face had the drained pallor of someone whose body was betraying them. Her left hand pressed desperately against her ribcage, fingers digging into the flesh as if trying to hold herself together. Pain. Real pain. The kind people didn't hide unless they were used to hiding everything. Reeves rapped his knuckles gently on the door. No answer. Alyssa, he called softly. Still nothing. His stomach tightened. This wasn't someone with a stomach bug. This wasn't fatigue. This was something deeper, something she'd been concealing for a long time. When she finally forced a weak, I'm fine, through the door, her voice shook. Reeves didn't hesitate. He opened the door, not fully, just enough to slip inside. What he saw made the air leave his lungs. Alyssa was on the floor, knees folded, one arm braced on the cabinet, the other still clutching her ribs. Her skin looked too pale, too clammy, her breath coming in short, painful gasps. She tried to stand. Failed. Don't, she choked out, eyes brimming with embarrassment, fear, or both. Don't call anyone, I'm okay. Just give me a minute. But Reeves kneeled beside her, voice low and steady. You're not okay. Her lips trembled. She shut her eyes as another wave of agony hit her ribs, forcing a soft, involuntary whimper past her lips. She tried to hide it, tried to silence it. But Reeves heard it clearly. And it hit him hard. Alyssa, he murmured, look at me. She shook her head, clutching her side harder. He gently but firmly inspected her posture, her arms tense, shoulders raised, breaths uneven, and recognition dawned. He'd seen this pattern before. In soldiers with internal scarring. In people with lingering trauma injuries. In survivors of blasts. Blast injuries. Fragmentation patterns. Shrapnel trauma. It couldn't be. It shouldn't be. Her record said nothing about deployment. Alyssa, he said again, this time more urgently, were you injured in the field? Her breath hitched, just enough to give him the answer. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. But one tear slipped down her cheek, falling onto her hand. And that was enough. The Admiral reached for her gently. Alyssa, I need you to tell me what's going on. No, she whispered, voice breaking, you don't. Another stab of pain cut her sentence short. She gasped and curled slightly, protective, vulnerable in a way she never let anyone see. Reeves swallowed. Something was terribly wrong. Something deeper than pain. Something older than her wound. Something she'd been hiding with every careful step, every calm smile, every guarded breath. Alyssa, he said quietly, you need medical attention. No hospitals, she rasped immediately, eyes snapping open in fear. Fear. Not discomfort. Fear. The Admiral felt something cold settle in his chest. What kind of injury made someone refuse medical care? Who exactly was this woman? What had she survived? But before he could ask another question, Alyssa's hand slipped, her strength faltering. Her body leaned sideways. Reeves caught her gently before she hit the floor. Her eyes fluttered weakly. She looked at him with a mix of apology and defeat. I was trying to hide it, she whispered. What? He asked softly. Then her hand moved, slow, trembling to the hem of her shirt. I don't want you to see, she breathed, voice shaking, but you're going to. and with that she lifted the fabric. Only an inch at first. Then another. Until old, jagged scars, dark, deep, unforgettable, peeked through the dim office light. Reeves froze. His breath stopped. His pulse hammered. Because what he saw. No civilian should have scars like that. And no one who had those scars should still be alive. Alyssa closed her eyes. "Please don't ask me," she whispered. But Reeves couldn't move. Couldn't speak. Could only stare as the truth began to unfurl before him. A truth she'd spent years trying to bury. The office was silent except for Alyssa's shallow, uneven breaths and the faint hum of the fluorescent light overhead. The walls seemed to close in, the air thick and heavy, charged with a tension neither of them could ignore. Admiral Mason Reeves' eyes were locked on her, searching, analyzing, trying to reconcile what he was seeing with what he thought he knew about her. He had seen injuries before. He'd witnessed soldiers limp back from firefights, seen scars that spoke of grenades, shrapnel, and close calls that should have ended careers or lives. But this was something different, something raw, something deliberate. Alyssa's fingers trembled as she held the hem of her shirt down, shielding herself instinctively from his gaze. Her ribs had been shattered before, multiple times. The jagged lines that marred her skin were a map of pain and survival, carved into flesh that had no business being whole. Each scar told a story she wasn't ready to tell, stories of betrayal, fire, and the fragility of human life. Reeves crouched slightly to be at her level, careful not to make any sudden movements. "Alyssa," he said gently, "I need you to tell me what happened. You're in pain. You shouldn't be hiding it from me." She shook her head, a fragile, involuntary gesture, and tried to straighten herself, wincing as another wave of agony shot through her side. Her face contorted briefly, a sharp, split-second grimace that belied the control she had maintained for months. Her breaths were shallow, measured, yet clearly insufficient. "I'm fine," she whispered, but the word had no conviction. It sounded hollow, fragile. It was the kind of lie she had repeated for herself in front of medics, doctors, and everyone who thought she was just a civilian. She had gotten used to hiding the truth that she had survived when no one expected her to, that she had been left behind, abandoned, and somehow clawed her way back to life. Reeves reached out, hesitating only briefly before gently placing his hand near hers, not on her scars, not in a way that could be misconstrued, but close enough that she could feel his presence. "Alyssa," he said, voice firm but calm, "you don't have to carry this alone. Not here. Not anymore." Her eyes flickered toward him. There was fear there, yes, but also a flash of something else, calculation, maybe, or the hardened instinct of someone who had survived situations where trust was fatal. You don't understand," she said softly. "No one can handle what I've been through." Reeves' gaze sharpened. "Try me. I can handle more than you think." Her lips quivered. She swallowed hard, but words wouldn't come. Not yet. Instead, she drew a shaky breath, her body bracing itself against another sharp pang that radiated from her ribs up into her chest. She instinctively gritted her teeth, trying to push the sensation down, but it was relentless. Reeves, seeing the fight in her posture, realized she wasn't hiding a recent injury. This wasn't a bruise, a pulled muscle, or a temporary flare-up. This was decades of trauma compressed into flesh, scar tissue, and muscle memory. He had seen soldiers like this, men who had been in firefights and lived, but their injuries were mapped in medical records, in operations notes, in medals. Alyssa had no such paper trail. She knew what he was thinking. That's why she finally exhaled, almost a sigh of defeat. It's not something you can fix with a bandage or a prescription," she whispered. Her voice broke under the weight of the admission. "I've been carrying this for years, trying to make it invisible, trying to pretend it never happened." Reeves kept his gaze on her, understanding that every word she spoke was a thread, a tiny opening in a fortress she had built around herself. He could feel the tension radiating off her, like standing near a live wire. One wrong move could cause the entire barricade to collapse, or worse, drive her further into silence. "You were in the field," he said carefully. His words were a statement, not a question. He didn't need to ask. Her body had already answered. The scars didn't lie. The way she flinched when she moved, the shallow breaths, the instinctive guarding of her side, they all screamed the truth he was piecing together. Her hand moved instinctively over her ribs, trembling. I wasn't supposed to survive it," she whispered, voice low, almost a growl. She looked down, hiding her eyes, her cheeks flushed. "They left me behind. They said I was gone, that there was no point in coming back." The room went still. Reeves felt a chill pass over him. That kind of betrayal, by people who should have protected you, was something he had only read about, something he had seen on classified reports, something that made the blood in his veins run cold. And yet here it was, living, breathing, scarred flesh before him. "You survived," he said quietly, almost to himself, though the words were also meant for her. "You made it back." Alyssa's lips pressed together, a small, pained smile flickering before disappearing entirely. "I shouldn't have," she admitted. Her hand traced lightly along the edge of one scar, as if remembering the heat, the pain, the fear of being left in a ditch, buried under concrete and fire. "Everything they told me about being dead I had to pretend, just to stay alive." Reeves reached out, hesitated, and then rested his hand lightly on her shoulder. Not invasive, not heavy, but grounding. "You don't have to pretend here," he said firmly. "Not in front of me, not on my watch." Her eyes flicked up to meet his. There was something there, trust, relief, fear, a mixture of everything. "You have no idea what it's like," she whispered. "To look down and see your body torn apart, to hear people walk away thinking you're gone, and to have to find your own way back." "I can't imagine," he admitted. "But I can listen, and I can help. You're not alone." She exhaled slowly, leaning back against the wall, trying to find a position that didn't make the pain worse. Her body was tight, coiled, every nerve ending screaming. But the presence of someone who didn't flinch at her scars, who didn't recoil from the truth, made it bearable. For the first time in months, maybe years, Alyssa felt her walls shift just slightly. She allowed herself to take a deeper breath. The pain was still there, sharp, insistent, a reminder of everything she had endured, but it was no longer suffocating her entirely. Reeves studied her, his instincts screaming at him that there was more, always more. This was only the tip of the iceberg. He could see it in the tension in her shoulders, in the way her eyes darted toward the door whenever he moved, in the almost imperceptible tremor of her hands. And then, as if sensing his scrutiny, Alyssa straightened slightly, her hand moving to the hem of her shirt again. Her gaze met his, steady but tense. "You're going to see everything," she said softly. Reeves didn't move, didn't speak. He simply nodded, a silent agreement. She was ready, whether she realized it or not. Slowly trembling, Alyssa lifted the fabric. And the scars were revealed in their full, jagged reality. Reeves froze. The lines running diagonally across her ribs were not casual injuries. They were surgical, brutal, survived. Every inch of them told a story of fire, explosions, and survival against impossible odds. They were reminders of moments when her life had been on the line, when trust had been broken, when she had been forced to rely on herself alone. The Admiral's mind raced. Questions collided. Who had done this to her? Why had she been left behind? How had she survived? And most importantly, what part of her past had followed her here to a base where no one else knew, where she thought she was safe? Alyssa's eyes searched his. Fear, pain, and a hint of shame flickered there. "Please," she whispered, voice barely audible, "don't ask me yet." But the moment had passed. The truth was out in the open, written across her skin for the first time in years, and Reeves' pulse thundered in his ears. Something inside him snapped, a mix of awe, concern, and anger. Someone had violated her. Someone had left her to die. And no one, not even an admiral with decades of experience, would stand by silently while that truth remained buried. He crouched lower, steadying himself beside her, voice low, calm but resolute. Alyssa, you survived this. I don't care what it took. You're here. You're alive. And I promise you I will make sure that whatever happened, it ends now. You're safe here with me." Her lips quivered. Relief and disbelief mingled with the searing pain that she could not hide. She had trained herself to be invisible, to survive quietly. But now, with someone who could see every line etched into her body, every story she had carried alone, a small crack appeared in the armor she had built around herself. And in that fragile, suspended moment, both of them knew this was only the beginning. Because scars like hers didn't just tell a story, they demanded justice. And the moment of silence was broken only by the faint, insistent pounding of a heartbeat that matched the storm already brewing outside the walls of that office. The office was thick with tension. The faint fluorescent hum of the lights overhead seemed almost oppressive, pressing down on the two figures in the small room. Admiral Mason Reeves' gaze didn't leave Alyssa Hale. Her breaths were short, uneven, as if the air itself was a blade against her lungs. The jagged scars along her ribs caught the harsh light, shadows accentuating the cruel curves of flesh that had endured more than anyone should have to survive. Reeves had seen battlefields. He had watched soldiers limp back from firefights, drag themselves across deserts and jungles, and survive blasts that could have obliterated their bodies. He had seen scar tissue and trauma mapped like a battlefield on flesh. But this, Alyssa's body spoke a language far more intimate than medical records or field reports could ever convey. Every line, every indentation, every faint reddish mark whispered a story of survival, pain, and betrayal. He swallowed, trying to steady his voice. "Alyssa," he said gently, kneeling slightly to be closer, "these scars. You weren't in an accident. You weren't injured in a civilian incident, were you?" She flinched not from the words but from the implication. Her hand moved instinctively to shield her side. "No," she whispered, voice barely audible. "I was." The room went silent. Reeves' mind raced. He had trained himself to remain calm under fire, to keep a clear head when others panicked. But the truth staring at him now, the scars, the pain, the unspoken history, was unlike anything he had anticipated. "You were in the field," he said carefully, not as a question but as a statement. His eyes searched hers, looking for a hint of deception. There was none. Only the faint, controlled tremor of a woman who had learned to live with pain that never truly healed. Alyssa's lips pressed together. Her eyes glistened, but she refused to look down. "I shouldn't have survived," she whispered. "Not like that." Reeves' pulse quickened. His experience told him that she had endured something catastrophic, something that should have ended her life. But she was alive. Not only alive, but moving with precision, alert, calm under scrutiny. The body of a survivor, the mind of someone who had fought through unthinkable odds. "Tell me," he said, voice low, commanding but not harsh. "Where were you? Who did this?" Her eyes met his, and in them he saw the faint flicker of memory, heat, smoke, screams. Something jagged and relentless burning itself into the core of her. She swallowed hard. I was part of a convoy," she said finally, voice trembling slightly. "A humanitarian mission, they told us. That's what we believed. Until it was." Reeves' eyes narrowed. "Until it was." "The convoy," she whispered, "was a cover. It wasn't for aid, it was for other purposes." Her lips tightened and she looked down briefly, then back up with a steadying breath. "And when it went wrong, I was left behind." The Admiral's jaw tightened. "Left behind." She nodded. Her hands shook as they traced the edge of one scar almost unconsciously. "Declared KIA. No one was coming back for me. They told everyone I was dead." Reeves felt a sharp pang of anger, but he controlled it. He had to, if he wanted to understand what had really happened. "Who left you?" he asked quietly, almost a whisper but heavy with the weight of command. Alyssa's eyes flickered. She looked away for a moment, as if the very act of speaking the truth could summon it back to life. I can't say yet," she admitted. "They're still influential, too powerful, too high-ranking." Reeves leaned back slightly, processing. The adrenaline in his veins began to shift from shock to calculation. She wasn't just a survivor, she was a witness. A living record of betrayal at a level most would never comprehend. Her very existence was a threat to someone. And if they knew she was here, safe on Coronado, they wouldn't hesitate to act. "Why are you here?" he asked, voice steady. "Why come back to this base?" Alyssa swallowed, eyes glossy. "Because I needed to help. I can't save everyone, but I can save some. That's what I do now. Rehab, recovery. I help the people who come back, the ones who live. I make sure they walk again." Reeves studied her. Her voice was calm, her actions deliberate, but the pain she carried beneath her skin, hidden for months, could not be faked. She had been trained not just in medicine but in survival, combat awareness, threat recognition. And yet she had chosen a civilian path, a quiet life in the shadows of military hospitals, helping soldiers rebuild what they could after war. And yet the scars betrayed a history she had not shared with anyone. Not the base, not the staff, not even her patients. "And the pain," he said gently, "why now? Why does it surface today?" Her gaze dropped, her breath trembling. "It doesn't matter," she whispered. "I've managed it for years, but sometimes it flares, and when it does, there's nothing to do but endure it." Reeves reached out slowly, carefully, placing a hand near hers, not touching the scars but grounding her, showing her she wasn't alone. "You don't have to endure it alone anymore," he said softly. "Not here. Not while I'm in charge." Her eyes flickered toward him. Relief, fear, and something else, a spark of trust, glimmered briefly before retreating behind the armor she had built around herself. "You have no idea," she whispered. "No one can understand what it's like." "Then help me understand," he said quietly, voice firm yet patient. "Start from the beginning." Alyssa took a shallow breath, bracing herself against the surge of pain that radiated from her ribs with every movement. Memories clawed their way to the surface. The explosion, the screams, the fire, the frantic scramble for safety, the realization that her own side had abandoned her. She swallowed hard, fighting back tears she didn't allow herself in front of anyone else. "I was declared dead," she whispered. "I shouldn't be alive, but I am. I survived because I had to, because if I didn't, no one would know the truth. No one would remember what really happened." Reeves absorbed every word, every pause, every tremor in her voice. He understood now, the intensity of her scars, the way her body tensed and flinched, the hidden strength behind her calm exterior. This was someone forged in fire, someone who had faced death and betrayal and had returned to rebuild not only herself but others. And then, almost imperceptibly, her hand moved again, trembling as she lifted the hem of her shirt, slowly, hesitantly, revealing more of the jagged lines etched into her ribs. Every scar was a story, every ridge a memory of pain endured, battles survived, and betrayals witnessed. Reeves' breath caught. He had known something about her past was hidden, but the reality of it, the brutality, the resilience, the courage, hit him harder than he had expected. His mind raced. Who had done this? Who had left her to die? And what dangers might still be following her, tracking her, watching? The silence stretched, heavy and charged, as if the room itself were holding its breath. Then Alyssa exhaled slowly, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, don't ask me yet. Not here. Not like this." Reeves didn't move, didn't speak. He simply nodded, understanding that this was only the beginning of a story that demanded careful listening. The scars told him enough for now. They spoke of survival, of resilience, and of a past that would not stay buried. And in that silent, suspended moment, both of them knew the truth was coming. It could not be avoided. Someone had left her behind. Someone had underestimated her. And soon, the consequences of that past would collide with the present, with all the fury and danger they had been trying to outrun. Because scars like hers didn't just tell stories, they demanded reckoning. And the moment of quiet tension was broken only by the distant hum of the base outside, oblivious to the storm that had just begun inside a small, dim office. The office seemed smaller now, almost claustrophobic. The fluorescent lights above flickered faintly, casting sharp shadows across Alyssa Hale's pale, scarred ribs. Admiral Mason Reeves remained crouched beside her, studying every nuance of her posture, every subtle tremor in her hands. Her pain was still there, hidden beneath layers of discipline, but it was now mingled with a fear that was almost tangible. "Alyssa," Reeves said softly, "you've survived something most people wouldn't even imagine, but hiding it doesn't help anyone. Not here, not now." Her fingers clenched along the edge of her shirt, knuckles white. She shook her head, voice barely audible. "You don't understand what I went through. It's classified. If I tell anyone, "You're already telling me," he interrupted gently. "You've already shown me everything that matters, and I need the rest." Her eyes flicked to his. They were steady, but a storm brewed behind them. For a moment she hesitated. Her chest rose and fell with ragged breaths, the pain along her ribs flaring again, sharp and unrelenting. Then finally she gave a small nod, almost imperceptible. "I was never meant to survive," she whispered. Her voice was brittle, fragile, like the sound of glass cracking. "After the convoy ambush, everyone believed I was dead." Reeves' jaw tightened. "Tell me who was responsible." Her gaze dropped to the floor. "I can't, not yet." The weight of that silence was suffocating. Reeves understood instinctively. Alyssa wasn't just hiding names. She was protecting herself, and possibly everyone else still tied to that operation. One slip could put lives at risk. "Then start from the beginning," he said firmly, though gentle enough to coax her without intimidation. "Tell me what happened, step by step. I need to know how you survived, how you came back here." Alyssa's throat tightened. She leaned against the wall, trying to find a position that didn't exacerbate the agony along her ribs. Her voice was low, steadying itself before it broke. "We were in a convoy in Fallujah. Humanitarian mission, supposedly. Supplies, aid civilians. That's what we were told. That's what everyone believed." Reeves listened intently, nodding slightly, encouraging her to continue. Every detail, even the small ones, mattered. "But it wasn't humanitarian," she said, her eyes darkened. "It was a cover. We were moving people they wanted hidden. Civilians, contractors, and when the intel went wrong, they left us. They abandoned us, just left us." The words hit Reeves like a punch to the chest. He had faced betrayal before, had dealt with enemies on foreign soil, but to hear it from someone who had been left for dead by her own side, someone under his command's protection now, stirred something deep, almost primal within him. "Who left you?" he asked, voice low, dangerous but controlled. Alyssa shook her head. "Not names," she said softly. "I can't say. They're too high-ranking, still active, still dangerous." The air in the office thickened. Reeves felt a surge of urgency. This wasn't just a story of survival. This was a live threat, a ticking bomb that had been hiding in plain sight. Alyssa wasn't safe, not yet. And if someone in power had ordered her abandonment, they could be anywhere, watching. "Then why are you here?" he asked, keeping his voice calm to prevent her from shutting down entirely. "Why come back to this base?" Alyssa's eyes flickered, her gaze distant. "Because I have to help," she said quietly. "I can't save everyone, but I can save some. I help the soldiers who survive, those who come back broken, physically or mentally. I make them whole again, or as close as possible. That's all I can do." Reeves felt a surge of respect. She had endured unimaginable pain and still chosen to help others. But beneath that respect was the gnawing fear that someone who had left her behind once might try again. And this time, no one would survive. "And the pain?" he asked. "Why did it flare today?" Alyssa swallowed. Her hand instinctively moved to her ribs again. "It's been dormant for a while," she admitted. "But certain movements, stress, it flares. There's no controlling it. No medicine that can touch it, only endurance." Reeves studied her, noticing how her muscles tensed, how her posture betrayed the years of trauma she carried. She wasn't just injured physically. The real scars were deeper, inside her chest, inside her mind. and he could see the careful calculus in her eyes, how she measured his reaction, testing, always testing, because trust could be fatal for someone like her. "Alyssa," he said softly, "you don't have to carry this alone anymore. Not here, not with me. I can help and I will. But you need to tell me everything so I can keep you safe." She met his eyes again, and for the first time, a flicker of vulnerability crossed her face. The wall she had built around herself was not gone, but it had a crack, just enough for him to reach in. She hesitated. "After the convoy, they declared me dead. I should have been dead, but I was. Somehow I survived. I crawled, hid, patched myself up. I learned to move quietly to avoid detection. I waited for the right time to return to help, to make a difference." Reeves felt the weight of her words settle over him. Survival, endurance, stealth, pain that refused to be silent. He had trained soldiers, led operations, seen war at its most brutal, but Alyssa's story was something else entirely. She had survived without anyone watching, without anyone guiding her. She had survived because she had no choice, and the cost had been written into her body forever. "And now," he asked softly, "now that you're here, what happens next?" Alyssa's eyes darted toward the closed office door, as if imagining shadows lurking in the hallway outside. "I don't know," she admitted, voice tight. "But I can feel it. Someone knows I'm alive. I can feel it in the air like a predator circling." Reeves nodded slowly. He had seen this before, trained operators with instincts honed under fire. Alyssa's body language, her reaction to stress, her hyper-awareness, all indicated she had survived a threat that most people would never even recognize. Just as he was about to ask another question, a sudden, loud bang reverberated through the corridor outside. The door rattled violently. "Alyssa Hale," a voice called, "open this door now." Both of them froze. The sound carried urgency, anger, and desperation all at once. Reeves' hand instinctively moved to cover hers, but not touching the scars. His mind raced. Someone had found her, someone who shouldn't have been here. Alyssa's body stiffened. Her hand went to her ribs instinctively. "Mercer," she whispered, barely audible. Reeves' eyes narrowed. Mercer, Staff Sergeant Cole Mercer. He knew the name. A SEAL with a reputation for intensity, focus, and unyielding loyalty. If he was here pounding on her door, yelling her name, something serious was unfolding. "You're not safe," she said softly. Her voice trembled despite her efforts at control. "If he's here, he thinks I'm dead." Reeves' mind raced. Someone believed she was dead, and that someone had found her. Alyssa wasn't just a survivor, she was a target. And if Mercer believed she was gone, then what else did he know? Who else was involved? The pounding on the door grew louder. "Alyssa, I know you're in there. Open up now." Reeves stood immediately, positioning himself between the door and her. His experience told him that waiting could be dangerous, but rushing blindly could be catastrophic. He needed to assess. Alyssa's gaze met his, wide, almost pleading. "He won't stop," she whispered. "Not until he sees me. He thinks I died." Reeves nodded. He didn't flinch. He would handle this, protect her, and find out once and for all what past had followed her to Coronado. Because one thing was already clear. Alyssa Hale's scars weren't just evidence of survival. They were a warning. And someone out there hadn't forgotten her. The pounding on the office door didn't let up. Each slam reverberated through the walls, rattling the small room and sending a jolt through Alyssa Hale's already tense body. She pressed her hand to her ribs instinctively, wincing as a sharp pang reminded her that her survival had come at a cost. "Open this door," the voice yelled again, urgent and commanding. "Alyssa Hale, I know you're in there." Reeves tightened his jaw. His instincts screamed caution, but his protective impulse was immediate. He could see the panic flashing across Alyssa's eyes, the split-second hesitation of someone who had learned to trust no one. I can't," she whispered, voice trembling. He thinks I'm dead. He'll pull everyone in if I open it. He'll make it worse." Reeves shook his head slightly. He's already here. Waiting or hesitating won't change that. You can't run from what's coming. You face it. I'll be here. Alyssa swallowed hard, her chest rising and falling rapidly. She tried to steady herself, but the pain along her ribs flared sharply as she shifted her weight. Every instinct she had honed over years of survival told her to hide, to vanish, to be invisible. But the office walls weren't going to protect her now. "Reeves," she whispered, almost pleading, "he's dangerous. Mercer is like anyone else. He doesn't understand." "Then we make sure he does," Reeves interrupted firmly. His eyes scanned the room, calculating. His years of command had taught him that control was always possible, even in chaos. And this was chaos incarnate. Another thundering slam against the door made them both flinch. Reeves moved first, stepping to the door and gripping the handle. He glanced at Alyssa. "Stay behind me." Her lips pressed together. She wanted to argue, to protest, but her body betrayed her fear. She allowed herself to be guided back slightly, her hand brushing her ribs, instinctive protection against pain and exposure. Reeves opened the door sharply, stepping into the hallway. And then he saw him. Cole Mercer, a SEAL by reputation, alone, tall, muscular, and exuding the lethal confidence of a man who had faced death more times than most counted. His eyes were sharp, searching, filled with a mix of disbelief and intensity that made Reeves' gut tighten. "Admiral Reeves," Mercer barked, tone clipped but controlled. "I was told He froze mid-sentence as his gaze locked on Alyssa, who now emerged cautiously from behind Reeves. For a heartbeat, the hallway seemed to hold its breath. Alyssa's scars, the subtle signs of trauma that only a trained eye could detect, were now fully visible in the stark overhead light. Mercer's expression shifted, shock, disbelief, something closer to reverence flickering behind his eyes. "Alyssa," he breathed, voice low, almost reverent, "you're alive." She flinched slightly at the intensity of his gaze, the weight of someone realizing that the stories he had heard, stories of her death, of her disappearance, were all wrong. She had spent years hiding from the world, yet here he was, staring at her as if she were a ghost returned. "Yes," she whispered, voice soft but firm, "I'm alive." Mercer's jaw tightened. He didn't speak for a moment, as if processing the impossibility of her survival. Then, abruptly, his posture shifted, the controlled calm of a warrior giving way to a storm of emotion. "They said you were gone," he said sharply. "Declared KIA. Everyone thought I thought." "Don't," Alyssa said firmly, cutting him off. Her voice trembled despite her attempt at control. "Don't, you have no idea, no one knows. I was left behind. I survived. That's all you need to know." Reeves' eyes narrowed. He had expected tension, yes, but the electric charge in the hallway between them was almost dangerous. Mercer was a man who had lived by rules, by orders, by the chain of command. And now he was confronting someone he thought was dead, a woman with scars that told a story no one could ignore. "Orders," Mercer said finally, voice rough. I should have been there, I should have." "You were not," Alyssa interrupted, voice stronger now, commanding. "And it doesn't matter, you were. I am here. I survived. And I am not your responsibility anymore." The words hung between them like steel wires, taut and unyielding. Reeves sensed the tension could snap at any moment, igniting violence that neither wanted, but both were prepared for. Mercer took a step closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "You don't understand," he said softly, almost reverently. When they said you were gone, I failed. I failed you." Alyssa's chest rose and fell rapidly, the pain along her ribs flaring again as she instinctively moved slightly backward. "You didn't fail me," she said, voice strained but steady. "I survived because I had to, not because of you, not because of anyone else. I survived because I had no choice." Mercer's expression softened, and for a moment the tension shifted, almost like a fragile truce forming in the hallway. But Reeves knew better. This wasn't over. It would never be over until the The full truth of what had happened, who had abandoned her, and why, was laid bare. He stepped forward, voice calm but authoritative. "Mercer, I need you to step back. This isn't about blame. This is about protection. Right now, she's vulnerable, and the last thing we need is for history to repeat itself." Mercer hesitated, glancing at Reeves, then back at Alyssa. The storm in his eyes softened slightly, replaced with something resembling understanding. "Understood," he said finally, voice low. "But she needs to know. She needs to know who left her behind." Alyssa's breath caught. The words were like fire against her raw nerves. She had spent years burying this truth, protecting herself, hiding from the past. And now it had arrived, not in whispers, not in shadows, but standing in the doorway, embodied in a man who had known her fate and had failed to save her. Reeves' gaze swept between them. He understood the danger in this revelation. Mercer's loyalty, while fierce, could also be a liability if it triggered rash decisions. And Alyssa, despite her calm exterior, was still human, still fragile, still in pain, and still a target for anyone who wanted to exploit her past. "Not here," he said firmly. "We move. Now, secure location, no interruptions. We find a way to tell the story safely, and we make sure she stays safe while we do it." "Agreed." Mercer nodded, a grin set to his jaw. "Agreed." Alyssa exhaled slowly, pressing her hand against her ribs instinctively, wincing at the reminder of her scars. She glanced at Reeves, then Mercer. "Lead the way," she said, voice tight but resolute. "But I swear, if anyone thinks I'm going back to hiding, I won't survive it again." Reeves gave a faint nod. He understood completely. She had been through hell, survived when no one thought she would, and now the past had caught up with her in a way that demanded caution, strategy, and precision. And outside the office door, the hallway remained silent now, but Reeves knew better. The base was vast, and someone with knowledge of her past, was already moving, watching, waiting. The storm that had begun in a quiet office now extended beyond the walls, stretching across Coronado like a shadow no one could ignore. Alyssa Hale, survivor of betrayal, bearer of scars no civilian should have, was moving into the next chapter of her story, and nothing would ever be the same. The corridors of Naval Station Coronado were quieter than usual that afternoon, but to Alyssa Hale, every shadow seemed alive. Her scars burned as she walked, a constant reminder of what she had survived and what she still carried within her. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant, gun oil, and the sea breeze drifting through the open windows, but it was laced with tension, an invisible predator stalking her steps. Admiral Mason Reeves walked beside her, calm, measured, and vigilant. His eyes scanned every angle, every corner. He had learned long ago that perception could be a weapon as deadly as any firearm. Behind them, Cole Mercer followed silently, his presence a mixture of reassurance and raw intensity. Together, they moved as a unit, an unusual alliance born of circumstance and necessity. "Safe house is 2 blocks from here," Reeves said quietly, voice low enough that only Alyssa and Mercer could hear. "We get there, secure perimeter, and then you tell us everything, step by step, no detail left out." Alyssa nodded, her hand lightly brushing against her ribs, the scars still fresh in her awareness. "Every detail," she repeated, voice trembling slightly. "But you have to understand, some of it isn't just my story. If it comes out wrong, it could put people in danger." "I understand," Reeves replied. "And that's exactly why we move now. You don't want anyone knowing you're alive before we're ready." Mercer's eyes narrowed, scanning the empty hallway. "She's right," he said. "If they know she's here, they'll come. They won't give up, not ever." Alyssa exhaled slowly, trying to steady her heartbeat. Her body, finely tuned for survival, remained alert. Every nerve ending screamed with the instinctive wariness of someone who had learned the hard way that danger rarely announced itself. She could feel the faint hum of adrenaline in her veins, the same surge she had felt countless times when life and death hung in the balance. "Do we know who we're dealing with?" she asked quietly. Reeves shook his head. Not yet, but I have a suspicion. Whoever left you behind, they've maintained influence. High-ranking, resourceful. They've been tracking you for a reason. And now that you're here, they might already know. A shadow passed across Alyssa's face. Then we need to move fast, she said. Her voice carried a mixture of command and anxiety, a reflection of someone who had led, survived, and adapted under fire. They exited the office, moving quickly but cautiously through the hallways. Every step Alyssa took reminded her of the fragility of her current existence. She had survived explosions, ambushes, and betrayal, but the idea of being cornered again, here, on American soil, stirred a fear that went beyond physical pain. Outside, the sunlight hit her face. For a moment she allowed herself a shallow breath of relief. The world seemed ordinary, normal, almost safe. But she knew better. Danger had a way of creeping in quietly, invisible until it struck. Reeves led them to a discreet exit, a service door that opened onto a narrow alleyway. The base seemed distant now, almost unreal, as if the dangers within were a different world entirely. Mercer stayed close, scanning the rooftops, the alleyways, the shadows. His training as a SEAL made him hyper-aware of threats. Every noise, every movement, every detail registered instantly. They reached the end of the alley and Reeves keyed a small, unassuming panel. A metal gate clicked open, revealing a black SUV waiting quietly in the shadows. Alyssa's pulse quickened, not from the proximity of danger, but from the realization that her past had just caught up to her. Inside the vehicle, they sat in tense silence. The engine hummed, the tires rolling over pavement, but the quiet was almost unbearable. Alyssa's hand instinctively rested on her ribs, the memory of pain a constant presence. "Start from the beginning," Reeves said finally, breaking the silence. "Everything, the convoy, the ambush, who left you behind. Every scar, every wound, I need it all." Alyssa closed her eyes, bracing herself. Memories flooded in, unbidden and raw. The sun beating down on the convoy, the explosion that tore through the vehicles, the screams of comrades, the chaos, the smoke, the heat, the fire, and then the betrayal. "They said it was an accident," she began, voice tight, almost breaking. "That the ambush was a failure of intelligence, but it was planned. Someone in command, someone trusted, left us there, left me there, declared me dead." Mercer's jaw tightened. "I knew they weren't telling the whole story," he muttered. "I felt it the moment I heard you were gone, but I couldn't." He stopped, frustration and guilt mixing in his expression. Alyssa nodded, her eyes moist but resolute. "You didn't fail me, they did, and I survived. Somehow I survived." Reeves listened silently, analyzing every word, every pause, every tremor in her voice. He understood the weight of what she carried, the physical scars, yes, but also the psychological ones. Betrayal leaves deeper wounds than shrapnel ever could. She continued, her voice gaining strength. "I had to move quickly. I had to stay invisible. Every day was survival. Every movement, every decision calculated. If they found me, if anyone from that chain of command found me, I would not survive a second time." The SUV turned down a quiet street, leaving the base behind, but the sense of being hunted remained. Reeves knew the risk. Someone high up, someone powerful, had orchestrated her near death and wanted to keep control over the truth. And now, alive again, she was a threat to their secrets. "Do you have anyone else you trust?" Reeves asked, "other than Mercer?" Alyssa shook her head. "No, trust, it's dangerous. You either survive alone or you die trying." Reeves nodded. "Then we stay together, until we figure out who's behind this, until we know you're safe." She exhaled, a small, shaky breath that carried years of tension, pain, and survival. "Safe, that's relative," she murmured. "But for now, I'll trust you." Mercer shifted in his seat, eyes scanning the road ahead. "You don't get to survive alone anymore," he said. "Not on my watch. You made it back once. You'll make it back again. But this time, we fight together." Alyssa's gaze met his, and for the first time in months she allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible nod. Allies. She had trusted very few, but Reeves and Mercer, two men from very different worlds, were now the only ones she could rely on, and the stakes were higher than ever. As the SUV rolled onward, Alyssa thought of the scars on her ribs, each one a testament to survival. Each one a warning, a reminder, a promise. Someone had tried to erase her. Someone had tried to bury the truth. But she was alive, and now she would fight. And then, as if on cue, a flicker of movement caught Reeves' eye out of the corner of his vision. A black sedan, discreet, almost casual, mirrored their route several blocks behind. Its driver made no attempt to hide. They were being followed. Reeves' pulse quickened, but his demeanor remained calm, deliberate. "They know," he muttered under his breath. "They've been tracking us since we left the base." Alyssa's hand flew to her ribs, bracing herself. They're coming for me," she whispered. Mercer's expression hardened. "Then it's time they learned you're not the same person they left behind." The SUV accelerated slightly, turning down narrow streets, weaving through side alleys and industrial roads. The black sedan followed, relentless but predictable. Every instinct Reeves had honed over decades screamed at him: prepare for confrontation, protect the survivor, strike only when necessary. Alyssa gripped the edge of the seat, her body tense, yet controlled. Pain radiated from her ribs, but her mind was sharp, calculating. This wasn't the first time danger had stalked her, and it wouldn't be the last. But this time she wasn't alone. And the storm that had begun quietly in an office had now escalated into a chase, a confrontation that would decide not just her fate, but the truth behind the betrayal that had tried to erase her from existence. Somebody out there wanted her dead. Somebody out there had underestimated her. And Alyssa Hale was ready to show them exactly why. The black SUV moved like a shadow behind them, tires humming quietly against the asphalt. Reeves' grip on the steering wheel was firm, his eyes scanning every side street, every alley, every potential escape route. Behind him, Mercer's posture was taut, muscles coiled like a predator ready to strike. Alyssa Hale sat in the back, her hand pressed lightly against her ribs, the jagged scars a constant reminder of battles she had survived and betrayals she had endured. "She's alive," Mercer muttered under his breath, voice low, almost reverent. "They thought she was dead, everyone thought." Alyssa's gaze met his in the rearview mirror. "Then why are they following us?" she asked quietly. Pain flared along her side, but her mind remained sharp. Every movement, every thought was a calculation. Survival wasn't instinct alone, it was strategy. "They underestimated you," Reeves said calmly. "They think you're the same person they left behind, but you're not." A flicker of movement on the side street caught Reeves' attention. He swerved subtly, not enough to draw attention, but enough to test their tale. The black sedan mirrored them, predictable, relentless. "They know the streets," Mercer said, voice tense. "They've been tracking your movements since you left the base. Whoever is behind this, they're not amateurs." Alyssa exhaled slowly, the weight of truth pressing down on her. She had survived ambushes, gunfire, and betrayal, but this was different. This was a calculated hunt. Someone high up, someone dangerous, wanted her dead, and now she was trapped in their game. Reeves scanned the route ahead. An overpass loomed, shadowed and isolated. "We're going through there," he said, voice low. "It's narrow, limits their maneuverability. We can control the situation." Mercer nodded, muscles tensing further. "I'll cover the exits, no surprises." Alyssa gritted her teeth, bracing herself as the SUV turned under the overpass. The shadows were thicker here, the light dimmer, the echoes of the city muffled by concrete walls. It was the perfect place for an ambush, or the perfect place to strike back. The black sedan followed, its headlights slicing through the shadows. Then, suddenly, the vehicle's driver slammed the brakes, a calculated move to force them into a trap. Reeves' jaw tightened. "Hold on," he said. The SUV skidded slightly, tires gripping the asphalt as he maneuvered into a side alley, narrow and dark. The sedan followed, relentless. Alyssa's pulse quickened. Pain radiated from her ribs, but she ignored it. Focus, awareness, precision. She had survived worse, much worse. Mercer leaned forward, voice sharp. "They're coming for a showdown. Brace yourself." The SUV stopped at the end of the alley. The sedan pulled up behind them, blocking any exit. Two men emerged from the shadows, figures tall, imposing, armed, professional. Alyssa's instincts screamed at her. Fight, survive, endure. One of them stepped forward, voice smooth but chilling. "Alyssa Hale," he said, "you were never meant to make it back. It's impressive, really, but your survival ends today." Alyssa's eyes narrowed. She recognized the tone, the cold, controlled malice of someone accustomed to having power, to dictating life and death. Her hand moved subtly to the edge of her jacket, brushing the strap of the concealed sidearm she carried. Reeves' voice was calm, authoritative. "Step back," he said, his presence commanding. "You don't want to make this worse." The man smiled faintly. "I think we already have." He raised his weapon slightly, just enough to threaten without firing. Mercer shifted instantly, muscles coiling, eyes scanning. "We have to neutralize them, now." Alyssa exhaled sharply, pain flaring along her ribs, but she didn't hesitate. She moved instinctively, drawing her weapon with precision. Years of survival had honed her reflexes. She didn't aim to kill, just to control, to survive, to protect. The confrontation escalated in seconds. Gunfire erupted, sharp and chaotic, echoing under the overpass. Reeves ducked, firing controlled shots to suppress their attackers. Mercer moved with lethal precision, covering exits and ensuring no one could flank them. Alyssa's aim was steady despite the pain, her body remembering every motion, every tactic drilled into her during her time in the field. The attackers faltered, realizing they were not facing a helpless target. Alyssa moved with purpose, her scars a testament to the endurance that fueled her every action. Pain struck with every movement, but she ignored it, channeling her survival instinct into every shot, every block, every evasive maneuver. Reeves assessed the situation, calculating odds, trajectories, and cover. "Alyssa, flank left," he instructed. "Mercer, cover right, we pin them." She obeyed instinctively, moving through the shadows, body tight, mind sharper than ever. Every scar along her ribs burned with memory, but it also reminded her. She had survived worse than this. She would survive this too. The attackers hesitated, underestimating her. One lunged toward her and she sidestepped, delivering a precise, disabling strike that sent him sprawling. Another aimed directly at Reeves, but Mercer intercepted, disarming him in a fluid, practiced motion. In moments, the confrontation shifted. The attackers were cornered, their confidence shattered. Alyssa stood in the middle of the alley, breathing heavily, sweat mixing with pain, eyes sharp and unwavering. She had survived betrayal, ambush, and abandonment, and now she had survived a calculated attack meant to erase her from existence. Reeves exhaled slowly, glancing at her. "You did well," he said quietly, voice filled with respect and relief. Alyssa pressed her hand to her ribs, wincing slightly, but her eyes held fire. "We're not done," she said. This was just the first wave. Whoever sent them, they know I'm alive, and they won't stop until they're sure." Mercer nodded, expression grim. "Then we prepare, we anticipate, and we hit back before they can strike again." The alley fell silent again, the echoes of gunfire fading into the distance. But the tension remained, thick and heavy. They had survived, yes, but the storm was far from over. Alyssa's past had followed her home, and now it was clear. The fight for survival had entered a new, dangerous chapter. As Reeves guided them to a more secure location, Alyssa's gaze flickered toward the shadows beyond the alley. Her mind raced. Scars along her ribs throbbed, memory and pain intertwined. But she knew one thing. She had survived worse, and she would survive this. Because Alyssa Hale didn't just endure, she fought back. And someone out there had underestimated her. That mistake would cost them. The secure house was quiet, almost eerily so, perched on a secluded street 2 miles from the base. Alyssa Hale sat on a worn leather chair, hand pressed lightly to her ribs, still aching from the fight in the alley. Her scars throbbed as if reminding her that survival had always come at a cost. Across from her, Admiral Mason Reeves and Cole Mercer scanned every detail of the room, alert for any intrusion, any threat that might have followed them here. "We need to know everything," Reeves said firmly. "No more fragments, no omissions. Whoever left you behind, we have to understand exactly what they did and why." Alyssa inhaled sharply, steadying herself. Pain flared with emotion, but her mind sharpened, each memory of betrayal and survival locking into place. "Fine," she said, voice tight but controlled. "You want the full story, you're going to get it." Her eyes darkened, and she began recounting the past in precise, controlled detail. The convoy, the ambush, the chaos of fire and smoke, the explosion that shredded the vehicle beside hers, the soldiers screaming, the merciless betrayal by those in power. Every scar along her ribs had a story. Every wound was a testimony to endurance. "They declared me dead," she said, her voice cracking for a moment. "Not an accident. It was deliberate. They left me behind to die, and the people who were supposed to protect us, they didn't care." Mercer's jaw tightened, anger flickering across his face. "I should have been there," he muttered. I failed you. I trusted the intel. "You didn't fail me," Alyssa interrupted sharply, cutting through his guilt. "They failed me, and I survived, alone." Reeves' gaze sharpened. "Then it's time to finish this. Whoever orchestrated your near death, we find them, and we hold them accountable." Alyssa exhaled, the weight of years pressing down on her. She had waited for years to confront this moment, and now it had arrived. But the reckoning wasn't just about revenge. It was about closure, justice, and survival. A subtle vibration in her pocket made her flinch. Reeves noticed immediately and moved toward her, signaling Mercer to cover. Alyssa pulled out a secure phone, her fingers trembling slightly. A single message appeared. "We know you're alive. Step outside alone, or the consequences are final." Her pulse surged. This was no idle threat. Someone with influence, reach, and lethal intent knew she was alive, and they wanted her to walk into a trap. Reeves' eyes narrowed. "They think fear controls you," he said, voice low. "They're wrong. You're alive. You survived being left for dead, and you're not going to run." Mercer's hand rested lightly on the grip of his sidearm. "We move smart," he said. "No heroics, but when they come, we finish this." Hours passed in tense preparation. Alyssa reviewed every detail of her past movements, every potential vulnerability, every memory of betrayal. She had survived before because she had been precise, calculating, and willing to endure pain without hesitation. Now, she was channeling every lesson into the plan for what was coming. At dusk, a black SUV rolled slowly up the street, the same ominous presence from before. 3 men stepped out, their movements deliberate, confident. The leader, tall with a calm cruelty in his gaze, stepped forward. Alyssa's stomach tightened, but she didn't flinch. "Ms. Hale," he said smoothly, "you've caused problems. Your survival was not supposed to happen. You need to come with us." Reeves stepped forward, voice steady and commanding. "She's not going anywhere, not with you, not anyone." The man's lips curled slightly, amusement mixed with threat. "Admiral Reeves, I see you've taken an interest. How considerate." Mercer's eyes hardened. "Step away from her," he said. "One move and it ends badly for you." A tense silence followed, the air thick with anticipation. Then Alyssa moved, quick, precise, and deliberate. She had spent years surviving impossible odds, and now she channeled every memory, every scar, every lesson into action. Her first move was swift. Disarm the closest attacker with a calculated strike, using his momentum against him. Reeves fired controlled shots to suppress the remaining two, while Mercer advanced to flank them. Chaos erupted, gunfire clashing against concrete, echoes of confrontation bouncing through the street. Alyssa felt the pain along her ribs flare with every motion, but she ignored it. Focus, precision, survival. She disabled the second attacker, a sharp twist and shove sending him sprawling. The third, leader of the group, drew a weapon, but Alyssa was faster. She blocked his arm, twisting and knocking him to the ground. For a moment the street was silent, broken only by the ragged breathing of those still standing. Reeves and Mercer flanked Alyssa, watching her carefully. Every scar, every tremor, every memory of pain was evidence of survival, but also proof of lethal skill. The leader slowly rose, glaring at her. "You think you've won," he hissed. "Do you know what this means?" "I know exactly what it means," Alyssa said firmly, voice steady. "It means you failed just like before, and you underestimated me." Reeves stepped forward. "The truth comes with consequences. You left her for dead. You lied, manipulated, and betrayed your own people. That ends today." Mercer moved in to secure the men, restraining them efficiently. Alyssa's hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from the surge of adrenaline and relief. She had faced impossible odds, survived betrayal, endured pain that never truly healed, and now she was taking back control of her story. The leader spat, fury and disbelief flashing in his eyes. "This isn't over," he growled. "You'll regret this. The higher-ups." "They're done," Alyssa interrupted, voice cold and unwavering. "Your orders end with you. I survived your betrayal once, and I'll survive it again if I have to. But today I am alive and I am free." Reeves and Mercer stood beside her, protective, vigilant, but also proud. Alyssa Hale had endured impossible pain, survived betrayal, and faced her hunters. And now she had reclaimed control, not just over her life, but over the story that had haunted her for years. As the night settled over the city, Alyssa allowed herself a deep breath. Her scars still throbbed, a reminder of the past, but the danger had passed for now. She had survived the storm, faced the reckoning, and emerged stronger. Reeves placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said softly. "You faced it all and you came out alive. That's more than anyone can say." Mercer nodded, eyes still scanning the darkness for any lingering threats. "And anyone who thought they could erase you, they learned the hard way. Never underestimate Alyssa Hale." Alyssa's eyes glistened, not with tears but with the fierce determination that had carried her through years of betrayal, pain, and survival. "I survived before," she whispered. "I survived betrayal, fire, and abandonment. And I'll survive whatever comes next, because I refuse to be invisible ever again." The night air was calm now, carrying the faint scent of the sea and the distant hum of the base. Alyssa's body ached, her ribs reminding her of every moment she had endured. But her mind was sharp, her heart resolute, and her spirit unbroken. Some scars never fade, some betrayals never heal, but Alyssa Hale had survived the impossible, confronted the powerful, and reclaimed her life. And for the first time in years, she could see the horizon clearly, not as a battlefield, not as a place of danger, but as a future she would define. The reckoning was over. The story was just beginning.